January 2026. The world woke up to a headline that wasn't supposed to exist for another decade. While the mainstream media was busy debating the latest trade tariffs, a quiet revolution was signed into law in a private wing of the Davos Summit. Donald Trump didn't just announce a new committee. He announced a new world order. He calls it the Board of Peace. But don't let the name fool you. This isn't about diplomacy, and it certainly isn't about the United Nations. In fact, if the Board of Peace succeeds, the UN as we know it is dead. We've seen the signs for months. The funding cuts, the ignored resolutions, the empty seats at the General Assembly. But this is the kill shot. A parallel structure of power, funded by private capital and governed by a hand-picked circle of loyalists. Today, we go behind the scenes to uncover the secret charter of the Board of Peace. Who is really sitting at that table? And why is the most powerful building in New York suddenly becoming a ghost town? To understand the board, you have to understand what happened on January 22nd. Behind the heavy oak doors of the Davos Congress Center, a private briefing took place. No cameras, no junior staffers, no press. It was here that the Trump administration laid out the new sovereignty doctrine. The message was simple. The era of the bureaucratic veto is over. For 80 years, the United States has operated within a system where its hands were often tied by the interests of 193 different nations. The Board of Peace changes that dynamic forever. Instead of asking for permission from a global assembly, the board operates on a pay-to-play and loyalty-first basis. It's a corporate approach to geopolitics. Think of it as a shadow UN, but one where the United States holds all the shares. The charter of this board allows it to authorize stability operations and economic reconstructions without a single vote from the UN Security Council. Visual. A hand-drawn sketch of a globe being wrapped in a golden chain, with the link being forged in Washington. This is the pivot point of 2026. We are witnessing the birth of a world where international law is being replaced by bilateral contract. It's efficient, it's fast, and for the old guard in New York, it's absolutely terrifying. But the president didn't build this alone. Behind the scenes, the architecture of the board was designed by a new breed of strategists. Men like Vance, who have openly questioned the utility of 20th-century alliances, and tech giants who see the world not as countries, but as data points and market. They realized that the UN was a 1945 solution to a 2026 problem. To them, the Board of Peace is the upgrade. But what happens to the countries that aren't invited to the table? What happens when the world's only power isn't just about who has the biggest military? It's about who controls the flow of lifeblood, the currency. In February 2026, the Board of Peace revealed its most controversial tool yet, the sovereign digital ledger. For decades, the United Nations and the World Bank operated on a system of transparency, or at least the illusion of it. But the board has introduced a parallel financial rail. This is a private, encrypted network where international aid, infrastructure loans, and military budgets are moved instantly, bypassing the traditional SWIFT system and the oversight of global regulators. Why does this matter? Because in this new system, the United States doesn't just send money, it programs it. Imagine a world where the aid sent to a country can only be spent on specific American contractors, or where a nation's credit can be frozen instantly if they vote against the board's interests. This isn't just diplomacy, it's a digital enclosure of the global economy. Visual. A hand-drawn sketch of a man at a keyboard, his shadow looming over a miniature city. The style is surreal and gritty. The architects of this system, technologists and private equity giants who now have permanent seats on the board, call it the efficiency protocol. But to the critics in the European Union, it's being called the financial Iron Curtain. By creating a system that only allies can access, the board is effectively forcing every nation on Earth to make a choice. Do you stay with the crumbling, slow machinery of the old world, or do you surrender your financial sovereignty for a seat at the board's table? superpower decides it no longer needs a global consensus to act? The impact of this shift is already visible. In the last few weeks of early 2026, we've seen a series of fast-track agreements that have bypassed every international treaty on the book. Take the case of Argentina. While the UN was debating environmental regulations, the Board of Peace signed a 50-year resource security pact. In exchange for total debt relief and the new digital currency, the board now has exclusive rights to the country's lithium and rare earth minerals. No debate in New York. No vote in Geneva. Just a private contract between a sovereign nation and the board. This is the new realism that J.D. Vance has been advocating for. It's a world where the United States no longer tries to save everyone. Instead, it builds a fortress of allies who provide the raw materials for the next century. But there is a darker side to these deals. Inside the leaked Appendix B of the board's charter, there are mentions of stability zones. These are regions where the board can deploy private security contractors to protect its assets, completely independent of UN peacekeepers. We are looking at a future where corporate interests and national military power are indistinguishable. While the world looks at the Board of Peace as a political masterpiece, inside the beltway of Washington, D.C., a different story is unfolding. This is a story of internal war. For decades, the United States has been governed by what many call the deep state, a network of career intelligence officers, defense contractors, and bureaucrats who stay in power regardless of who is in the White House. But the Board of Peace is designed to be the ultimate deep state killer. In January 2026, reports began to leak from Langley and the Pentagon. Career officers are being sidelined. Intelligence budgets are being rerouted. The board isn't just ignoring the CIA, it's building its own version of it. Imagine an intelligence agency that doesn't report to Congress. An agency that isn't bound by the Freedom of Information Act because it's technically a private-public partnership. This is the hidden architecture of the board. By utilizing private satellite constellations and autonomous AI surveillance, the board has created a panopticon that the old guard can't touch. One former director, speaking off the record, called it the second government. He warned that the checks and balances designed by the Founding Fathers are being replaced by a terms of service agreement. The tension is at a breaking point. We are seeing a purge of the old guard, replaced by a new breed of loyalists who believe that the only way to save America is to destroy the very institutions that built it. This internal war isn't staying within American borders. The board's new intelligence apparatus is now being turned toward its own allies. If you want a seat at the Board of Peace, you don't just sign a treaty, you provide access. In late January 2026, a memo surfaced suggesting that nations entering the board's digital ledger must also integrate their national security data into the board's AI mainframe. For countries like Poland and Argentina, who are desperate for the board's protection and financial liquidity, the price of admission is total transparency to Washington. The promise is security. The board claims that by sharing data, they can predict and stop terror attacks or economic collapses before they happen. But the reality is a loss of national sovereignty. The board now knows what a foreign prime minister says in a private briefing before his own cabinet does. This is the ultimate evolution of the Monroe Doctrine. It's no longer about keeping foreign powers out of the Americas. It's about keeping every ally inside a digital fence. The board is building a world where privacy is a luxury of the past, and loyalty is monitored in real time by a machine that never sleeps. And as we move into the second quarter of 2026, the first security audits of Tier 2 nations are about to begin. As the Board of Peace Charter was signed in Davos on January 22, 2026, a shocking detail emerged about its membership. This isn't just a club for presidents, it's a club for the ultra-wealthy. Reports indicate that a permanent seat on the board comes with a staggering price tag, rumored to be a $1 billion contribution to the Global Stability Fund. Take a look at the executive board. You'll see names like Mark Rowan, the CEO of Apollo Global Management, and Steve Witkoff. These aren't diplomats. They are the titans of private equity and real estate. By placing billionaires in executive positions alongside Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Trump has effectively privatized global diplomacy. For the first time in history, the reconstruction of war-torn regions like Gaza isn't being managed by the UN's Blue Helmets, but by private equity firms looking for a return on investment. The board's charter allows these members to oversee defined portfolios. This means a single billionaire could theoretically control the entire energy grid or water supply of a rebuilding nation. It's a bold experiment in corporate peace, but it raises a terrifying question. Who does the board actually serve? The people or the shareholders? Perhaps the most glaring absence at the Davos signing ceremony was India. Despite a close relationship with the Trump administration, New Delhi chose to abstain. Why? The answer lies in the board's hidden agenda: the power to mediate any conflict it deems a threat to stability. Inside the Indian diplomatic circles, there is a growing fear that the Board of Peace, led by Trump, will eventually turn its eyes toward the Kashmir dispute. Trump has never hidden his desire to be the great negotiator, and the board gives him the institutional platform to force mediation where it isn't wanted. While Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif was quick to sign the charter, India remains non-committal. They see the board as a double-edged sword. On one hand, it offers a fast track to global influence. On the other, it threatens the very concept of strategic autonomy. If the board decides to resolve Kashmir to ensure regional stability for its new trade routes, India would find itself trapped in a framework it didn't design. This is the new great game of 2026. It's no longer about land. It's about who has the authority to draw the lines on the map. While the world watches Gaza, the board is already moving its pieces in the South Caucasus. Vice President J.D. Vance is preparing for a February mission to oversee the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity, or TRIPP. This is the board's first major test. It's an infrastructure project that links Armenia and Azerbaijan through a multimodal transit corridor. But in the board's world, a road is never just a road. It is a sovereign corridor under board oversight. By anchoring peace in concrete and steel, the board is making it impossible for these nations to return to conflict without collapsing their own economies. It is peace through dependency, the hallmark of the 2026 American doctrine. Across the Atlantic, the reaction to the Board of Peace hasn't just been skeptical, it's been panic. In the halls of Brussels, diplomats are calling this the Greenland mode. It refers to Trump's 2026 ultimatum. Either the European Union joins the board's digital and security framework, or they face total strategic decoupling. The board isn't just asking for trade deals. It is demanding access to the Arctic. With the melting ice opening new trade routes, the Board of Peace has claimed administrative oversight over the northern corridors. They argue that because European nations cannot agree on a unified defense, the board must step in to prevent a Russian or Chinese vacuum. But there is a darker subtext. Leaked documents from the Davos summit suggest the board is looking to establish sovereign energy zones in the North Sea. These would be regions where European laws don't apply, only the board's arbitration. For nations like France and Germany, this is a nightmare scenario. They are being forced to choose between the protection of the American nuclear umbrella and their own legal sovereignty. As 2026 progresses, the Greenland mode is becoming the ultimate test of the Western alliance. If Europe stays out, they risk becoming a museum of the 20th century. If they join, they surrender the keys to their own continent. But while the North is freezing, the board is already heating up its most ambitious project in the South, the 100-day Gaza reconstruction. This is the board's showcase. Unlike the UN's decades of failed aid programs, the board's approach is surgical and corporate. They have bypassed the Palestinian Authority and Hamas entirely. Instead, the board has appointed a chief executive of reconstruction, a former U.S. logistics general who reports directly to the board's private equity members. The plan is simple: total security in exchange for total economic integration. The board is building what they call stability hubs, walled, high-tech industrial zones where Gazans can work for board-approved multinational corporations. Security is provided not by national armies, but by the board's private contractors, using AI-driven surveillance to monitor every entrance and exit. To the board, it's a masterstroke of efficiency. To the critics, it's the birth of the corporate city-state. A place where you have a job, a home, and safety, but no political voice. The board is betting that a war-torn population will choose prosperity over politics every single time. And if this model works in Gaza, the board plans to export it to every conflict zone on the planet. It's a new kind of empire, one built not with colonies, but with contracts. While the world's cameras are fixed on Washington and Davos, a new physical center of power is being constructed. Deep in the heart of the American West, rumors are swirling about a facility known only as Site B. This isn't a military base in the traditional sense. It is the physical home of the board's digital ledger. According to insiders, this facility houses the most advanced quantum computing array ever built, dedicated solely to geopolitical simulation. The board is no longer reacting to world events, they are trying to outrun them. By feeding every scrap of global data, from grain shipments in Ukraine to encrypted messages in Tehran, into this machine, they believe they can predict the next crisis before it begins. But the existence of Site B reveals the board's ultimate endgame. They aren't just bypassing the United Nations, they are building a technological alternative to the state itself. If the board can manage global resources, military movements, and financial flows from a single, private server, then the traditional concept of a capital city becomes obsolete. Power is no longer where the people are, power is where the data is. This is the shadow capital of 2026, a place where the future of billions is decided by a group of men who haven't been elected, but have been programmed into the system. By mid-2026, the strategy becomes clear. It is the final exit. The Board of Peace has drafted a timeline to formally withdraw the United States from all UN financial obligations by the end of 2027. This isn't just about saving money. It is about the total collapse of the 1945 world order. Without American funding and the board's participation, the UN will be forced to downsize to a mere advisory body. The board will become the de facto governing council of the Western world and its resource partners. But there is a catch. The board's charter contains a clause that allows it to intervene in failed states, a term they have redefined to include any nation that experiences a major economic collapse or internal unrest. As the UN fades into history, the Board of Peace stands ready to move into the vacuum. They aren't just waiting for the world to change. They are engineering its collapse so they can be the ones to rebuild it. The era of the nation-state is ending. The era of the board has begun. We are told that democracy is about voices, about the millions of people who vote for their future. But as we've seen, the most important decisions of 2026 aren't being made in voting booths. They are being made in Davos, in private digital ledgers, and in the shadow capital. The Board of Peace is the ultimate evolution of power. It is silent, it is efficient, and it is absolute. As the doors of the old world close, we have to ask ourselves, in a world governed by contracts and algorithms, where do the people fit in? The machinery is in place. The signatures are dry. The board has already decided what happens next. The only question left is, are you on the list? But what does the Board of Peace mean for you? For the average citizen in Chicago, London, or Buenos Aires? The answer lies in the individual stability score, a project the board has quietly integrated into its digital ledger. In the old world, your rights were protected by a constitution. In the world of the board, your access is determined by your data. By late 2026, the board's private partners have begun rolling out a unified security ID. It's a digital passport that links your bank account, your travel history, and your social media activity into a single, encrypted file managed by the Silicon Coalition. The board argues that this is the only way to prevent the chaotic actors of the old world from disrupting the new stability. If you want to use the board's financial rails, if you want to work for a Tier 1 corporation, or if you want to travel between stability zones, you must maintain a positive standing. It's not a law, it's a terms of service agreement for the planet. And unlike a court of law, there is no appeal process for an algorithm. If the board's system flags you as a risk, your digital life can be frozen in a millisecond. This is the quiet reality of 2026. We aren't being conquered by force, we are being managed into submission. As the board's power solidifies, a new phenomenon is emerging: the ghost nations. These are the countries that have tried to maintain their traditional independence, nations that refuse to hand over their data or their resources to the board's executive members. By the summer of 2026, these nations are finding themselves erased from the global map. They aren't being invaded, they are being ignored. When a nation is placed on the exclusion list, its ships are no longer insured by board-controlled companies. Its currency is no longer convertible on the digital ledger. Its internet access is throttled by the Silicon Coalition's satellite. This is the ultimate shadow war. The board is proving that in a hyper-connected world, you don't need to drop bombs to destroy a country. You just need to delete their access. We are seeing the rise of a two-speed world: the high-tech, hyper-secure world of the board and the crumbling, isolated world of the ghosts. The UN, once a place where these ghost nations could voice their grievances, has become a hollow chamber of echoes. The board doesn't listen to grievances, it only reads data. However, in the shadows of the board's absolute control, a new kind of resistance is forming. It's not a political party or a rebel army. It's a network of digital outlaws, programmers, former diplomats, and intelligence officers who have gone off-grid. They are building a parallel internet, a parallel economy, and a parallel history. They know that the board's greatest weakness is its obsession with total data. If you can stay off the ledger, you stay outside their control. As we head toward 2027, the battle lines are no longer between East and West, or left and right. The real battle is between those who want a world of perfect stability and those who are willing to fight for the right to be unpredictable. The Board of Peace has promised us a world without war. But at what cost? As the ink dries on the last treaties of 2026, we are realizing that the peace they offered is the peace of a cage. The question is, who has the key? As we stand on the threshold of 2027, the blueprint is no longer a secret, it is a reality. The Board of Peace has done in 18 months what empires of the past couldn't achieve in a century. They have replaced the messy, loud debates of democracy with the quiet, cold efficiency of the algorithm. But look closely at the 2027 projections. The board is already planning its next move: the global resource audit. This isn't just about lithium or oil anymore. It's about the most precious resource of all, human attention. By controlling the digital infrastructure of every Tier 1 and Tier 2 nation, the board will have the power to shape reality itself. In 2027, the history books will be digital. The news will be predictive. And the peace we were promised will be enforced by a system that knows what you're going to do before you even think of it. The United Nations was a dream of 1945, a dream that we could all talk our way out of conflict. The Board of Peace is the wake-up call of 2026. It is the realization that in the future, power doesn't belong to those who speak. It belongs to those who own the platform. We have spent the last 40 minutes looking behind the closed doors of Davos and into the server rooms of the American West. We have seen how Trump, Vance, and a coalition of tech titans have redrawn the map of human influence. The UN building still stands in New York, a monument to a world that no longer exists. Meanwhile, the real decisions, the ones that determine your bank balance, your freedom of movement, and your nation's survival, are being made in whispers. But history has shown us one thing: no system is absolute. Every ledger has a leak. Every wall has a crack. The Board of Peace wants you to believe that the transition is over, that the game is won. But as long as there are those who question the silence, the story isn't finished. The year 2026 was the year the system changed. 2027 will be the year we find out if we can live within it, or if we have to build something new from its shadows. The machinery of power is moving faster than the headlines can keep up with. If you found this investigation valuable, it's because you are one of the few who still wants to see the gears behind the curtain. But this is only the beginning. There are documents we couldn't show today, and stories that are still developing in the exclusion zones. We are tracking every move the board makes. If you want to be part of the small percentage of people who truly understand the 2026 shift, you need to be here for the next briefing. Click the subscribe button and turn on all notifications. Don't let the algorithm decide what you see. Take control of your information. Check the link in the description for our deep dive report on the Shadow Capital. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and most importantly, stay awake. We'll see you in the next one.